Well, hey there. It's Gray Prescott here from West Coast Robotics for another edition of Lely Coffee Chats. And today I'm here with Devan Toop from Toop Farms in Chilliwack, British Columbia. How are you, Devan?
Oh, pretty good. How about yourself?
Yeah, no complaints. Yeah, I see. I was driving by the farm yesterday, and I think I saw 1870 something
Yeah,
on the sign.
1873. Yeah, no, that's when our family officially came to Chilliwack. I'm the sixth generation farming now in Greendale. We were pretty well in Chilliwack before it was named Chilliwack.
Yeah, that's you're working on your second century there, which is maybe common in the east of Canada, but pretty exceptional here in British Columbia. So
Yeah.
awesome stuff. And I'm sure the people who started the farm would be pretty surprised to see the automation you have on the farm there today. Now you have both of Lely's manure handling products, the
Yeah.
Discovery 90 SW and the
Mhm.
Discovery 120 collector. Um, would you be able to maybe tell us why you chose Lely for your manure handling solutions?
Well, back in 2006, I believe it was. That's when West Coast got started. We were actually the first sale for Lely in Western Canada. Whether we got a single Lely Discovery that worked our 5-row barn. It had 4 alleys to do. The barn's 300 feet long, and we had that one robot go across our feed alley and then do the entire barn. And I think that ran for about what 6 or 7 years, I think. And I guess on Lely's record, it was one of like the hardest working discoveries on the planet, which I take a little bit of pride in. It worked
That
great.
was the classic, was it
That was
not?
that was a classic. And then, but I mean, we noticed in the summertime there was a little bit of problems with we have large fans in our barn, and it's pretty well ventilated, and it can dry the floors out. So then when the SW came out, that piqued our interest. So we ended up trading in our classic for two SWs, and then they've been great. So we had a lot of faith in the brand, and then
For people watching, I guess the difference between the SW and the classics.
the SW is it has a water tank on it, and then you have a little filling station. So on top of just scraping the barns, it also has like a little water jet. So it kind of helps. It helps take some of the slip off the floors, or it cleans off that fine layer there, so you have better traction for the cows.
Awesome stuff, especially in
Yeah.
the summer. Then I'm assuming.
Yeah, in summer and also in the winter time too. It's like whenever it isn't like that great level of humidity where everything kind of cleans a little bit better. It really cleaned up. It pretty well was a great improvement on the classic, even though the classic was a great machine.
Yeah, totally. And so 6 or so years ago, I think you traded those in, and last year you added the latest version in the Lely Discovery line, the 120, also known as the collector.
Yeah.
What are the differences between the collector and the other discoveries that you already had running?
Well, like on top of the water function, which was kind of an upgrade on the classic, then the collector added a vacuum function, and it was we had just gone to robotic milking, and we turned our old parlor into a dry cow barn, and we had real limited space to work, and we had a 40-foot wide section of barn, and once we put in head to heads, and we had about a 14-foot feed alley and a 10-foot back alley. That was great, but I mean the big thing was how are we going to clean it? And so we thought about putting in traditional scrapers with a flume, but then to do that we'd have to jackhammer out part of a foundation, and we'd have to change up all of our pumps and then work the flume in, and it was a really exhausting thing. And then we got word that Lely was working on the dry floor scraper, and we had nothing but confidence in the scraping product. So I was hounding you guys reasonably well. Get it?
Yeah, I
So
remember that.
yeah. And so once it was in, whatever cost it was to have the robot in, when you work out that versus getting a new pump and getting all the rope scrapers in, or and modifying everything to work that system, it made a lot more sense to us.
Yeah, awesome stuff. I mean, we sell alley scrapers all the time.
Mhm.
I'm a big proponent when they work, but
Yeah.
yeah, I recall at your farm, it was a lot of infrastructure changes, whereas the collector, were you able to make, like, how did the collector work well with the existing infrastructure? I guess that was at the back of the holding area
Yeah,
for power wash.
we initially had a flush flume from the old holding area, so we had kind of a basin at the back of the barn where all the wastewater would pool and go into an existing some existing drop slats and a channel that went to a collection pit that fed into our barn. So we had a lot of the pieces that made a lot of sense to getting the collector. So all we had to do was we just added a staircase in the back of our barn for the collector to kind of create a dumping alley. And then after that,
Because you had a walkway that kind of went through.
we had a walkway, like we had a grate and there was a walkway where the flume was. And so we just had to kind of make it so that it could have access to it all the time. And it was an area that was clear. So, you know, whatever. So cows and kids and anybody else could get in the way of the robot.
Yeah.
And that was it.
So that's a modification that we did to the barn to facilitate the collector. Were there any other modifications that you had to do there to make that collector work in the dry cow pen, or was it pretty much
really? I mean the charging station is really compact. We already had a water line from a boot wash station, and we just rerouted that to a fill tank, and then we put the filler spout underneath the staircase. I mean, you know, I've been building stuff now for like 15 years, so I mean, I pretty well have an idea of how things work, and you just think of it from an operational standpoint. It works pretty well.
Awesome. And yeah, how long has it been in operation now?
About what, year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah, I guess it has been that long. I know we waited so long for it that it still feels like it just got here.
Yeah.
How often do you have it cleaning your alleys?
It's running every hour, and then there are 2 blocks where it's like a little lower traffic where we just have it rest and have the battery charge up a little bit more. So it's doing 22 runs a day, I think. And then that's split between 4 different routes. So we have like the area behind the stalls are cleaned more frequently than some of the lower traffic walking areas, and then our feed alleys, like the area closer to the feeder is more around the feeding schedule. So we just kind of keep that away for like a 6-hour block for when there's fresh feed, and then we have that run on the ground.
And what about like the corners and crossovers of the barn? Is it cleaning those as well, or is it pretty much just doing the main alley?
We have one larger crossover, and then we have one smaller alley that's just a little bit bigger than the width of the collector, and then those are on their own individual runs. So it cleans them fine. I mean, like just like the Discoveries and the SWs, there's a good program in terms of it cleans the corners quite well. Like it rides into the corner, and then it just kind of rides the wall. It's a lot better than I thought it would. So
I'm happy to hear that. I was quite surprised the first time I saw one go into a corner as well. You wouldn't think that, you know, the squarish shape going into a corner I thought it would leave a lot in the corners. So I'm happy to hear that's worked well for you.
That's why we're not in.
How much water does the collector use, do you think? And do you have any seasonal adjustments that you make where maybe more water in the summer, less water in the winter?
I mean, we haven't really tuned the water to be higher or lower. I mean, aside from like the frost settings, so whenever you get down to freezing temperatures, then it'll just stop working. We turn off the tank just to make sure there isn't any freezing inside the robot. But the water is, you know, we've always tried to be minimal with the water usage in terms of we want enough to do the job, but we don't need to be excessive with it, because I mean, pit capacity is always at a premium pretty well on any farm, no matter where you are. And so it doesn't go through, I mean, we've never really put a meter on it, but it's not enough where it's a concern.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's probably somewhere maybe around that 300 liters mark or something like that. If it were spraying at the maximum.
Yeah.
What kind of bedding are you using on the free stalls? And maybe you could describe the free stalls.
Yeah, I mean, free stalls, they're just head-to-head Artex stalls. And then we have a cow mattress with like the memory foam top to it.
Mhm.
We've just, because we're a slatted barn for a milking barn, we're used to the mattresses and the maintenance and the cover. And then we also use just a sawdust bedding with it. And we
And
try
would you say they have light amount of sawdust or a lot of sawdust in that dry cow pen?
it's pretty light, but I mean, we've noticed that ever since we had discoveries, we started using discoveries in the cow barn, that the bedding stays cleaner in the stalls so much more than before. So you can have less bedding in the stalls, and but they can still be comfortable. You can still have the right amount for absorbing in a year of milk, and you don't have a lot of manure coming into the stall. I think our bedding consumption, I mean, we were probably bedding twice as much before we had the discoveries in the barn than we did after. So, I mean, and then the time to do stalls dropped down dramatically as well. And then all of a sudden your environmental mastitis goes down. And I mean, it's all these things you don't think about until they're gone. And you're like, oh yeah, that's why. That makes sense.
Yeah.
You're not tracking manure into the stalls. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I've never really considered about reducing the amount of bedding, but I guess it would stand to reason if there's less manure on their feet, then that would lead to less in the stalls and
It's because you don't have
less.
for bedding.
Exactly. Well, and as
Yeah.
you mentioned, that pit space is a premium, no matter where you're farming. So anything you can do to keep stuff out of there, I'm sure is seen as a benefit.
Yeah.
Have you seen any difference, like talking about the cows? Have you seen differences if they have cleaner hooves? Have you seen any health outcomes
Oh yeah. I
or
mean, our in terms of our foot health, our fungus rates are extremely low. Like, we run a hoof trimmer every 4 weeks. We just run a foot bath once a week with copper sulfate outside the robots. And I think our fungus rates are probably are the lowest amongst this clientele. Cows are always clean. I mean, and that's always big for when you're in robotics as well, keeping the cows clean. And I mean, it's whenever we have people come visit the farm, that's something they're always shocked to see how clean the cows are, and that's because of the discoveries. And because the barn is so clean, they're not bringing manure into the stalls. They're not laying in this much manure, and yeah, it's one of those side benefits you just don't really notice. I mean, with flat barns, there are naturally drier barns, but I mean, even given, I would imagine, with the collector on solid floors, the more often you can keep your barn clean, the better it is for your cows.
yeah, and you mentioned cleaning every hour or so in
Mhm.
that dry cow pen, as
Mhm.
opposed to what, 12 hours before the collector went in?
Yeah, tractor scraping, we were doing it twice a day. And that itself is, I mean, dry cows are not always the most motivated to move. I mean, it's
Hmm.
like a pen full of, women that are all 7 months pregnant. You want them to do exercise? Good luck with
Yeah.
that. So,
I'm not going to comment on that,
yes,
but
yes, we both have kids, Gray. I understand. We know.
speaking of the cows, how did they adapt? You know, the collector is what, 4 feet wide?
Mhm.
Was there a little period of the cows getting to learn how to move out of its way when it's coming, or did they pretty
I mean, it was
seamlessly?
the same. It was the same with the Discovery Classic. It was the same with the SWs. I mean, at first they see it, but it's not like it's zooming up and down the barn at 60 miles an hour. I mean, it's slow. It beeps. It makes a noise, and then they see it. They go up and sniff it. And I mean, we have a small group of cows that actually like hang out where the collector is parked and will just kind of lick it or try and nip
Yeah.
on any little piece of rubber that's on it. I mean, dry cows have nothing but time.
Exactly. So they adapted to it well. You never
Yep.
see really a conflict between the
No,
collector and
you're
the
more often
stalls.
to see like the collector come by the barn, come by a stall, and the cow just kind of lift her one leg and just kind of look at it as going by the proper leg and keep on going.
I'm sure when people come to the farm for the first time, they're probably pretty amazed how that machine and those animals interact with each other.
Oh, yeah. They are are always quite mystified by the poop Roomba, as they call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Have you seen any changes in the transition cows? I was wondering maybe about somatic cell or bacteria count amongst that group, just because that's where the collector, it's on the dry cow, so I would think that's where effects might show themselves. But besides hoof
I mean,
outcomes, yeah,
we've always had a pretty good dry cow program in terms of, you know, using a dry cow treatment, and then using a teat sealant, and you know, it's all part of the regimen. You always want to keep the cows clean, but I mean, dry cows usually on a larger scale dairy are usually the ones that people kind of just not really focus on the most. But it's good to, I mean, but we have them in an area that's pretty close to like our main office or the main hub of where everything else is happening on the farm. So, you know, we still do the stalls twice a day. But I mean, keeping the barn clean is just, it's one of those things you take for granted until you realize how nice it is to have it. I mean, back in our old dry cow program, we'd be more prone to bringing out cows for fungus or treating feed ailments. And then for some strange reason, we don't have any fungus in the dry cows anymore. And then, yeah, and that's, I would probably attribute that mostly to having the collector.
awesome. Well, yeah, and more mobile cows calving
Mm.
in,
Yeah.
it's crucial in any AMS barn for sure. And finally, maybe we could talk a little bit about your employees and yourself, right? It's not just you on the farm.
Yeah.
How has the collector changed, if at all, the daily routines, you know, sort of surrounding that pen?
I mean, with the dry cows, it's kind of taken a lot of the squeeze off of having to open up the barn and chase the dry cows around, having to scrape it out. I mean, that itself was like, you know, a 45-minute undertaking in terms of getting the cows out and moving them around, locking them into one side of the barn, scraping it out, and then putting them on the other side of the barn and scraping the back out. And I
And that
mean,
was twice a day, 45 minutes, 2 times a day.
yeah.
Wow.
So I
Now,
mean,
the collector works on its own most of the time, but is there some kind of a daily routine surrounded with involving the
yeah,
collector?
the main thing is like as we walk by it, it's parked in a spot where it's maybe about 20 feet away from a hose spigot that we have. So, you know, you take a look at it. If there's some manure on it or whatever. I mean, we've been using collect or discoveries enough where we know that the main thing you need to do is just make sure that it's looks reasonably clean, and anything where you have power or water going in, you want to make sure that they don't have an excessive amount of manure on, because if there's manure on the water fill spout, then you have to worry about manure going into the water fill system and clogging the filter. And then as long as the charging strips are clean, then you don't have to worry about any charging problems. And then you have your two little ultrasound eyes, but they're tucked in there pretty deep, but you always want to just kind of just, you know, give it a quick shot with a hose and maybe just look and see if it's going. But I mean, the ultrasounds are hidden a lot better on the collector than they are in Discovery from you know, random spatter, I guess you would say. So yeah, I mean, be pretty well to look at it. If it looks a little bit dirty, just bring the hose out, clean it up, and it's fairly low maintenance.
So you
And
like
then,
you like having it at the front of the pen there. You walk in, it's not out of sight and out of mind. It's right there.
no,
You have to look at it.
well, it's nice to know. I mean, you know, everyone knows that the schedule of it, it's always on the hour. And then you know, as you're in the barn, you'll hear like a faint little humming noise, and then you know that it's working. And that's pretty well all you hear, because I mean, the cows aren't going to make any noise when it's around there. It's just one of the crew there.
Yeah, awesome. One of the crew. I like that. Is there anything else you'd like to share? I guess you've been very generous with your time here. It's been nice to talk. Yeah, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Not really. I mean, like I said, I've been working with West Coast with Lely for almost 15 years now. So yeah, I mean, it's, you know, technological advancement has done wonderful things for dairy farming, and I'm always happy to work with companies like West Coast and Lely in helping, you know, show what we're able to accomplish as dairy farmers and how agriculture keeps on evolving. And yeah, I mean, I'm always excited to see what's coming next. I know you keep trying to sell me interesting stuff, and yeah,
Well,
I'm
for us, it's always fine when a new product comes out and it aligns with a real need that somebody has, right? It's fine and well to sell product, but when you're selling a product that didn't exist in the past and it really fits the, it eliminates an hour and a half of tasks a day,
Mhm.
then that's always the most enjoyable
Yeah.
part of the job, I know, for myself personally. So
And
I'm happy to hear that
it
it's
makes
working
so much
well.
more sense to guys who are like planning on doing retrofits or whatever. And I mean, building is so expensive. Building a new structure, if you can use any older structure and just be able to have a reliable manure system and not have to invest so heavily into it is such a huge plus. And then guys who are looking at barns that might have an odd number of alleys or whatever it is. I mean, it's so hard to try and find a reliable manure management for that kind of system.
Yeah, so if you were considering renovating a space,
Mhm.
and maybe doing more renovations to make something like alley scrapers work versus trying to plop a collector in there and do it that way, would you have any reservations about putting one in again if you had a space to redo?
No, I mean, we're, I shouldn't tell you this, but we're always thinking about what would it be like to have another collector in our close-up area, just
Okay.
because a scenario where you want the alleys to be cleaner, but you don't want something that could potentially harm a calf if one was to get out somewhere, then that would be nice to have too. Like I said, I don't need you to sell me another collector right now. We're doing just fine.
No, but I know, like, for a lot of people who are considering something with a new product, especially, there's always a lot of reservations of, is this product going to be more work than just cleaning the barn, uh, for instance. So, I'm getting the impression that for you, it's been pretty low maintenance, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, we're well accustomed to, there's always a teething process when you have a new product in a new barn. But I mean, West Coast and Lely have been were great with helping us get set up, and when we had any problems or concerns, they were right on it to get it fixed up. And we want to help you guys get better at having a better product, because in turn then you guys know how to service us better. So it's all about communication between farmer and their equipment rep, and as long as it just works.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think that's a great place to end. And so I guess thanks for your time. This has been really enjoyable, and it's always nice to talk to somebody about how Lely products are working for them. So bye for now.
It has always been a pleasure talking to you, Gray Prescott of West Coast Robotics.
Thanks a lot, Devin. Bye for now.